Good morning, Ian, and thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk to you and to get to know the Silverbullet business. Can you tell us, first of all, what it is that the company does?
Yeah, no, thanks, Fiona, and thanks for having me. So, yeah, with pleasure. So, Silverbullet is what you would broadly put into the category of a digital transformation business. But more specifically, we set up Silverbullet, and what Silverbullet does now for multiple clients around the world is to help them to really maximize the return on investment for their marketing investment. So, return on investment in marketing through the smart use of data. And increasingly, that requires the smart use of technology to unlock how data flows around their organization. But fundamentally, it's about the strategic question of how do I use this wonderful new resource of data to maximize the impact I can have on my customer? And that's big global brands around the world, such as Heineken, Dolce & Gabbana, Jägermeister, among others, that we're delighted to have as our customer base.
And how does what you do, how is it different from what other service providers supply?
Yeah, in essence, we established Silverbullet as a services business 5 years ago, or over 5 years ago now. And that services business was born because the world was, those big strategic questions were being asked by big global clients, but there were very few people that could help them make good decisions around how they move forward, what kind of technology they need to do it, how they integrate that technology into their organization, how they use service providers and what they do themselves. So those were the big strategic questions that we set up to answer. And it became clear that moved really quickly for us. We started working with numerous clients very quickly, and I've worked with over 70 since, actually, global clients. But what popped around sort of 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, really, was that privacy was shifting how those brands really needed to behave. GDPR had just come in Europe, and it was being replicated now since around the world. And that privacy agenda threw up an even bigger challenge. And that bigger challenge was, how do we adapt to a world where it's privacy first, where first-party data becomes the predominant data source, but also where cookies, and we've seen this play out since, and I'll come to it more later, but where cookies are not going to become the predominant targeting mechanism for media. And that really turned the whole industry on its head, or started to turn it on its head. So we saw that 2 years ago. So what we focus on as a specific as Silverbullet is solving for how data flows around organizations in the privacy era. So in the era where the market's moving towards, which is about protecting consumers, but ensuring that brands can market to those consumers in the most effective way. So we've got now products as well as services that can help unlock that opportunity for brands. So that's something that's very particular and specific about Silverbullet.
Okay, so with this changing world, can you tell us a bit more about your products that will help in this cookieless environment?
Yeah, so to explain what cookieless means, I mean, we're seeing it around us every day. So Google and Apple took it upon themselves over the last 18 months to really take GDPR up a level. So GDPR sets the playing field, if you like, of regulation, but fundamentally it's Google and Apple that give advertisers and us as consumers access to the internet. So Google and Apple have taken their decision to deprecate the cookie, or deprecate the little device, the data device that tracks us around the web, and in a different form with Apple, but as an ID within Apple apps. And you'll see actually very topically that Apple's latest big advertising campaign is all wrapped around that. So it's interesting to see that becomes a central point for their business, not just about the way that the consumers behave. So with that deprecation of the cookie, or the death of the cookie, let's keep it simple, that death of the cookie really requires a completely new way of working in the advertising industry. It absolutely inverts or turns on its head everything that brands have been doing with their agencies and with technology providers to connect with their customers. So that's a huge opportunity, not only to help them to map their way through it using our services capability. We've seen big growth in our business around services because the confusion point around how do I connect with consumers is getting more complex every day. But fundamentally, it also requires new products, because the products of yesterday were all built on that cookie basis. We're built on the fact that cookies were always going to be used as the predominant targeting source. So we invented a product called 4D. 4D is a product that looks at the world differently and solves the problem of targeting, or identifying where consumers are spending time in contexts, or identifying where consumers are, the likely consumer that you want to speak to in a fully GDPR compliant way is spending time. So we look at the context or the environments that exist rather than the individuals themselves. and target those environments, knowing that those environments are likely to be very relevant to the consumer that that brand wants to target. And we embed that into the programmatic media or the digital media ecosystem, giving us access to a huge market, but also solving a huge problem for our clients and our agency partners.
Now, you're a UK-based company. The largest market in the world is the US by a long way. How do you plan to break into that market in a big way?
Yeah, we've done this before. I'm pleased to say, I've been blessed to run significantly scaled services and technology companies in the past, as have my co-founders in the business and senior management, and we can talk about them a little bit later. But we identified that the US is the biggest market for investment in media, as you will quite rightly identify. It's the big market. What we've done is we've got ahead of that. We've invested in that already before pre-IPO, in the sense of hiring 2 or 3 key people. My co-founder is a US citizen. He's relocated back to the US market to lead our strategy and our product. He's our chief strategy officer. He's now based out of New York. So we're wrapping a team of customer success and product people around Umberto, our chief strategy officer in New York. We've also hired a gentleman called Mark Pearlstein, who came from a very scaled company called DoubleVerify, which listed only last month for $5 billion or thereabouts, I believe, on the US market, on the New York market. So that's an interesting piece in itself. Mark joined us in Q4 last year. We'll be wrapping a sales unit around Mark, both in New York, Chicago, and on the West Coast, to expand our sales efforts. And underpinning of that, of course, will also be customer success teams, the teams that connect with our customers, agencies, and clients to make sure the product's working right. So they will be based in the US too. So we're investing heavily. A lot of our fundraise is based around investing into the US market and growing that rapidly across New York, Chicago, and out of LA on the West Coast.
Okay. And the management team, what are your backgrounds?
Yeah, I mean, we are, every one of us on the management team have been involved in some form of scaling of a significant tech or services business. My background was I was the leadership, and I was the international CEO of a business called Axiom, so running the business outside of the United States. And into that business was a big characteristic. It was a company called LiveRamp, which has gone on to be a huge success. So I was blessed to have some experience building that business and experiencing that business. But more importantly, outside of my experience, before that, by the way, I was in big scale media agency networks. I was the chief digital officer for Starcom MediaVest Group, part of the Publicis Media Group, and prior to that in brands and agencies. But more important than me, I think, is the management team that's been attracted to the business and are now scaling the business. Mark Pearlstein, I've already mentioned, is a big experience over the last 12, 14 years, 20 years in the industry and plus, but over the last 8 years was part of building DoubleVerify's book of business revenue from I think from 8 to over $250 million. So huge scaling of a business that sits in the same category as we do, speaking to very similar constituents or potential customers. So that's really important to us. That gives us confidence in our modeling, gives us confidence in our ability to build the appropriate talent that we need. And of course, he's done it before. So that gives us an engine room, if you like, of revenue growth, especially based in the US. But and equally as important, on the product side of our business, my co-founder of the business, as I mentioned earlier, a gentleman called Umberto Torelli, our chief strategy officer and overseer of all the product. Umberto was involved in scaling and then exiting BlueKai as a business to Oracle, which was a real forerunner in our industry, actually, of the type of technology that prompted the launch of Silverbullet. It was when we were looking at LiveRamp and BlueKai that we realized there was a huge gap in helping clients to really unlock the value that existed in those technologies. So Umberto has deep expertise in product and how to build product and scale product. And into Umberto, we're blessed to have a fantastic product leader who was actually leading the product development of Oracle's Marketing Cloud, which also incorporates one or two of our key competitors, but also comparable businesses, one called GrapeShot that sits within the Oracle Marketing Cloud. And Marco was part of the team that was running the product development of that. He now runs our product team into Umberto. So we have a really strong product unit wrapped into which we're scaling, both in London and New York. And the final piece, I think, is making sure that we have a strong operational function. So we have Kristen Kelly as our Chief Operating Officer, and Kristen's background was as most latterly was president of Publicis Media's Data and Technology Unit. And Kristen has deep experience in how to scale and interact with agencies who are going to be a key channel for our 4D product. So not only do we work with clients, we work deeply with agencies and we work deeply with other technology platforms. So that integration and that operational piece is what Kristen brings to be almost a fabric that knits together that product sales and the customer opportunity. So Kristen is a great person to enact that.
Now you're listing on AIM. How do you see that as accelerating your strategy?
Yeah, we're delighted with AIM. We think it's one, it has credibility globally, and we're a global company. So we wanted that credibility in terms of our ability to execute any M&A when we see the opportunity. We do see the opportunity. We look to success cases like S4 Capital, where we operate in a similar space. And we've seen the wonderful success that Simon Sorrell's made of S4. We're different, but it gives us something that gives us confidence that that's a market which is where technology and opportunity and business in digital transformation are being respected and from an investment perspective. So that we see that as an opportunity. And I think importantly as well, AIM gives us a really solid opportunity to scale our business when we see new opportunities to raise funds in the future if required. We don't foresee that. That's not in our roadmap. But we know that opportunities do come, and we're in a scaling business in the United States. We may be offered up opportunities that are unforeseen at the moment, and that gives us the ability to flex if we need to. So we're super excited about the opportunity that AIM offers, both in terms of our paper credibility as well as our opportunity to grow the business.
All sounds very exciting. Thank you very much, Ian.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks. Nice to meet you.